Om Shri Sai Ram, Gita Vahini, by Bhagwan Shri Satya Sai Baba, Chapter 18. I will bear your well-being here and hereafter. Since the Uttarayana Margam is lit by the holy splendor of Jnana, or the self-knowledge attained due to purity of inner faculty as a result of Nishkama Karma, it is praised as the Shukla Margam or the bright path. The Dakshina Margam is dark, filled with tamas and ajnana. So, it is called the Krishna Margam or the dark path. Those who discard the body and move along the Shukla Marga attain moksha, which is devoid of moham, which is the seat and source of Brahma Anandam, from which there is no return to this world of name and form, this arena of embodied beings. Those who leave the body and move along the Krishna Margam have to bear again the physical encasement called Deham or body, subject to birth and death. Those who discard the body with the glory of Jnana or self-knowledge move along the Uttarayana Margam, and those who die in ignorance of their Atmic reality move along the Pitrayana Margam of the Gunas. Sattva Guna is pure and effulgent, the Tamo Guna is dark, and so they are distinguished by the opposite colors of white and black. Again, there are two nadis, Ida and Pingala by name, Ida to the left and Pingala to the right of the spine. Ida Nadi Margam is the lunar path and the Pingala Nadi Margam is the solar path. The highly experienced yogis proceed along the solar path, Pingala Nadi Margam, using their yogic powers, and the ordinary folks who does not possess any yogic powers move along the lunar path, Ida Nadi Margam. This is another profound meaning. Sama Yogam or association leads to Viyogam or disassociation. It is the law of nature that birth ends in death and death leads to birth. The essential natural state which knows no coming, that is birth and going, is called Brahma Sakshatkara Jnanam, clear vision of the absolute truth as one's own true self. Since Brahman is all pervasive, where is the other space to come and go? There is no need to doubt whether such a stage is within the reach of all, whether all can achieve this victory, nor is any special effort or a peculiar good fortune or a specially designed act necessary. It is enough if the mind is always fixed on Paramatma, that is, if the Lord is meditated upon without break, that will cleanse the mind of its impurities. When the mind is pure, the moha that is now clogging it will disappear. This is by itself comprises moksham. Of what? For what is moksham but moha nasham, expelling delusion? A person who has achieved this will attain Brahmayakam, union with Brahman. Howsoever he might leave this body when he dies, such a person is called Jnani. At this, Arjuna put in an inquiry. He said, Krishna, I do not quite understand the meaning of what you call jnana or knowledge. Is it the knowledge learned through the verbal faculty of the teacher? Or is the knowledge culled from the Shastras? Or is the knowledge imparted by those rich in actual experience? Which among these is jnana? Which kind of jnana, if gained, liberates man from bondage to the cycle of birth and death? Please enlighten me. Krishna replied, Listen, Arjuna, whatever you mention now are all useful at some stage or the other of one's spiritual development. But none of them can help you escape the cycle of birth and death. That which releases you from the bondage, which is in the form of cycle of birth and death, is known as Anubhav Jnanam, or experiential knowledge. That alone can help you to become worthy of moksham or liberation. The teacher who imparts Shastra Jnanam or the knowledge culled from the scriptures can be of some help in the process, but he cannot show the real self. You have to experience and realize it yourself. Besides, you have to be free from asuya, or imputing or attributing flaws over virtues. Then only can you be called a paripurna jnani, or absolutely enlightened. Besides being free of asuya, he must have shraddha, or steady faith in the source of jnana. Shraddha is essential even for the performance of the smallest act by man, not man alone, but bird and beast, worm and virus. All must have shraddha to succeed in any endeavor. When you have no shraddha in the fact, you can be certain you cannot gather the fruit. Or if you have got the fruit of action also, it would not be shuddha, or pure and holy. That is why Shraddha is accorded such prominence. Without Shraddha, it is not possible to achieve Shuddha Phalam, or pure outcomes. Arjuna, I am the absolute and sole witness. Through me, this Prakriti, this conglomeration of the 5 elements called Prapancham, all these movable and immovable objects are formed. Through me as the cause, the Prapancha behaves in various ways. Fools who cannot understand my reality as the highest principle and as the one who commands all the beings perceive me to be just an ordinary man. Some great men reverentially meditate on me as Brahman, or the absolute reality. Others worship me under various names and in various forms. Some others worship me through Jnana Yajanam. Whatever the name used in worship, whatever the form of worship, I am the recipient, for I am the goal of all. I am the only one. There is no other. I myself become the worshipped with my many names and forms. Not only this, but I am also the fruit of all actions, the bestower of the fruit, the basis, the prompter, the promoter of all. Why recount and repeat? I am the source behind the creation, sustenance and dissolution. I am the non-perishable cause. Realize me, the primal cause, that is indeed moksham. He is the Jivan Mukta, or the liberated even while alive, who attains that moksham. Therefore, Arjuna, if one yearns to become a Jivan Mukta, to attain moksham, he must accomplish some discipline, some sadhanas. He must become a sarva sangha parityagi, a renunciate in all respects and on all planes. That is to say, he has to eradicate fully the deha abhimanam, that is the attachment to the body. Hearing this, Arjuna intercepted, Krishna, do you consider that it is easy to become a sarva sangha parityagi? Even accomplished ascetics find it difficult to fully eradicate the deha abhimanam, or the attachment to the body, and you recommend it so easily to ordinary people like me. You speak of it as if it is a very simple task, but really it is a formidable endeavor. I feel you are putting me on a trial with such suggestions. Can I ever realize you? Can I attain moksham or liberation? I have no hope, he said, and stood still with dejection. Krishna was watching him losing courage. He neared him and patted his back in a reassuring manner. He said, Arjuna, there is no need to get startled and desperate just for this. That is the mystery behind this. No one, no, One will get faith as soon as one hears of it. One must delve into it with the help of reason. Then it will be realized that this discipline is not as hard as it is imagined to be. To become Sarva Sangha Parityagi, it is not necessary to grow matted hair, wear ochre robes, and torture the body into skin and bone by engaging in physical austerities or tapas. It is enough if you do all the acts as dedicatory offerings to the Lord without any desire for the benefits therefrom. Then you can definitely attain me. You can win moksham. This is the truth. This is the ultimate and absolute secret behind this discipline. Nishkama karma, or performing all activities without any desire for the benefits therefrom, is not difficult to practice. Only one should have some Purana Shraddha, or complete faith without an iota of doubt. Of course, Shraddha is essential for accomplishing any small task or activity in this transactional world. And so, don't you think that having Shraddha in the aspect of spirituality is very fundamental to succeed? Do I need to elaborate to underscore its significance? Whoever among ardent devotees performs all acts as an offering to the Lord with no other thought, whoever meditates on me, serves me, worships me, remembers me, I myself bear the burden of his yoga shema, or the yoga attainment of what is to be attained, that is, can be worldly or spiritual progress. Shemam, protection of what has been attained, worldly or spiritual. Of those with such equanimity of mind or intense focus on me at all times. Did you hear me? Asked Krishna, patting Arjuna again on his back and imparting courage to his drooping heart. Now, this statement about the Lord guaranteeing the yoga shema of the devotee has given rise to a great deal of misunderstanding. From the Pandits down to the poorest in intelligence, persons have failed to grasp its real import. The commentators on the Gita too propagate this declaration in manifold ways, but they lack the experience needed to realize its significance. This most sacred sentence is as the origin or nucleus to the Gita body. The navel of Vishnu has the place where Brahma, the creator of the universe, took birth. Likewise, this shaloka, Yoga Shemam, Vahamahayam, is the origin or the place of birth for all sadhakas who thirst from Brahma, Jnanam through the Gita, Parayanam, regular and systematic recitation of Gita, or Gita, Pracharam, expounding Gita. If this sacred shloka is followed in practice, the entire Gita can be assimilated. There are a number of interesting stories currently surrounding this sacred shloka. I shall give one example. A learned Pandit was once giving discourses on the Gita in the august presence of Maharaja. One day the turn of this shloka came. Ananya Chintan Tuman Ye Janaha Pariya Pasate Tesham Nityabhi Yuktanam Yoga Shemam Vahamayam. The Pandit was explaining enthusiastically the many-sided implications of this shloka, but the Maharaja shook his head and said this meaning is not correct. He continued to dispute the correctness of each and every explanation the Pandit gave. The poor Pandit had won meritorious distinctions at the court of many a Maharaja and was honored by them with pompous titles. He felt as if he was stabbed when the Maharaja, in the presence of the entire band of courtiers, condemned his explanation of the shloka as wrong. He smarted under the insult, but plucking up courage, he again set up his task, and collecting all his scholarship, he plunged into an eloquent discourse on the multiple meanings of the words yoga and shema. With examples, the Maharaja did not approve of even this. He ordered find out the proper meaning of this shloka, and having understood it well, come to me again tomorrow." With this, the Maharaja rose from his throne and went into the inner apartments. The Pandit lost even the few grains of courage left in him. He was weighed down by anxiety. He tottered under the insult. He reached home and, placing the copy of the Gita aside, he fell on the cot. Surprised at this, the Pandit's wife said, "Tell me why you came home from the palace today in such grief. What exactly did happen?" She rained one anxious question after another, so that the Pandit was obliged to describe to her all that had happened, the insults heaped on his head, the command with which the Maharaja sent him home, etc. The wife listened calmly to the account of what had happened, and after pondering deeply over the incident, she said, "Yes, it is true. What the Maharaja said is right. The explanation you give for that shloka is not correct one. How could the Maharaja approve it? The fault is in you." At this, the Pandit rose in anger from the cot like a cobra whose tail is trodden hard. "What do you know, you silly woman? Am I inferior in intelligence to you? Do you, who are engaged in the kitchen all the time, cooking and serving, claim to know more than I? Shut your mouth and quit my presence," he roared. But the lady stood her ground. She replied, "Lord, why do you fly into such a rage at a statement of mere truth? Repeat the shloka once again to yourself and ponder over its meaning. You will then arrive at the right answer yourself." Thus, by her soft words, the wife brought calmness into the mind of her husband. The Pandit once again started analyzing the meaning of each individual word in the shloka. "Ananya chintaya yantomam." He began deliberately and slowly repeating aloud the various meanings. The wife intervened with a gentle smile and said, "Dear, what benefit is to learn and expound the meanings of words? Tell me what your intention was when you approached this Maharaja. What was the purpose?" At this, the Pandit got wild. "Should I not run this family, this home? How am I to meet the cost of food and drink, of clothes and things for you and all the rest? It is for the sake of these that I went to him, of course, or else. What business have I with him?" he shouted. The wife then replied, "My dear Lord, if you had only understood what Lord Krishna has declared in this shloka, the urge to go to this Maharaja would not have arisen in you. If he is worshipped with distraction-free mind, if one but surrenders to him, if at all times the mind is fixed on him, the Lord has declared in this shloka that he would provide everything for the devotee. You have not done these three. You approached the Maharaja believing that he would provide everything. This is where you have gone wrong against the meaning of this verse. That is the reason why the king did not accept your explanation." Hearing this, that reputed scholar sat a while ruminating on her remarks. He realized his fault. He did not proceed to the palace the next day. Instead, he got immersed in the worship of Lord Krishna at home. When the king inquired why the Pandit had not appeared, courtiers said that he was staying at home and had not started out. The king sent a messenger, but the Pandit declined to move out. He said, "There is no need for me to go to anyone. My Krishna will provide me with everything. He will bear my yoga shemam himself. I suffered insult because I did not realize this so long, being blinded by eagerness to know the manifold meanings of mere words. Surrendering to him, if I am ceaselessly engaged in worshipping him with no other thought, he will himself provide me with all I need." When the messenger took this message to the palace, the Maharaja felt satisfied and he proceeded to the dwelling of the Pandit on foot. He humbly saluted to the Pandit, saying, I thank you sincerely for explaining to me this day, out of your own experience, the meaning of the shloka which you took up yesterday. Thus the king taught the Pandit that any propagation of spiritual matters which does not come out of this crucible of experience is mere glitter and show off of one's confidence, but not the true essence. Have you grasped the point? Even today, many learned men who go about discoursing on the Gita and doing propaganda for it do not observe its principles in the practice. They are engaged in simply expounding to the world the valueless rind, the textual meaning, the sense of the words, and nothing more. Trying to spread the Gita without actually practicing it, it is tantamount to ruining the cause and insulting the sacred book. They extol the Gita as the very breath of their life, as the crown of all scriptures, and as having emanated from the lips of the Lord Himself. They show so much reverence for the book that their eyes overflow with tears of bliss at the very mention of its name. They place it near to their hearts. They press it on their eyes as a gesture of devotion. They keep it in their shrines and offer puja to it with great bursts of demonstrative devotion. All that respect, all that worship is only for the paper, the book. If indeed they have reverence for the words of the Lord, the contents of the book, they would have striven to put them into practice, isn't it? No, they do not strive. They have no iota of experience. If they have the experience, none of them would barter the spread of that experience for money. They would yearn only for the grace of the Lord. Not even 1 in a million among the Gita Pracharaks today, among those who walk about their mission of spreading the Gita, has the yearning for the grace of the Lord. No, if they have that yearning, they would have never thought of income or of money through such means. Jai Sai Ram.
Saishwaraya vidmahe Satyadevaya dhimahi Tanna sarva prachodayat. Om Saishwaraya vidmahe Satyadevaya dhimahi Tanna sarva prachodayat. Om Saishwaraya vidmahe Satyadevaya dhimahi Tanna sarva prachodayat. Om